Hello friends, today we will talk about Narasimha avatar of Lord Vishnu, God in the form of a lion coming to save his devotee Prahalada. More dramatic than a Rajinikanth movie. Could this be true? So there are many variations of this story, which is Lord coming to save his devotee, in many different Puranas, and most of them, almost all of them, have the core subject of God saving Prahalada, and then there will be variations based on what the author writes in different Puranas. So this is Bhagavata Purana. I am taking Bhagavata Purana as a reference. There are many stories which are not necessarily Hindu stories, but they are termed as myths because it is not something which can be believed easily, God coming in the form of lion. But the same story is present in many other books as well. In the Bible, it is the book of Daniel. So Prahalada in the Hindu Puranas is the same as Daniel. So it will be hard to follow, but I'll try to explain that. So I'm not saying, let's be careful, I'm not saying that Prahalada and Daniel are the same. What I'm saying is Prahalada and Narasimha avatar is one story, one Purana. Daniel is another Purana, but they both have their base on one real story. This is what I'm saying. Yeah, so if you directly compare these two, it will not fit. But if you compare these two with respect to the real story, which I'm going to explain now, it will fit, it must fit. Okay. So what is this story all about? For those who have watched my previous videos about the Matsya avatar or the great flood, Varaha avatar and so on, you would have guessed already what the Narasimha avatar could be. Yes, it is something which is happening inside the female body, especially the reproductive system of a female. The formation of an egg cell. That's it, in simple words. The story how an egg cell is formed and how the ovulation takes place is termed in a story manner, which is called as the Narasimha avatar. I will explain that. So to start with some basics, I mean there will be a lot of technical terms. I'm not a biologist or anyone with any idea, no clue about cell biology, but I'm just explaining this so that next time when you want to read or when you come across these texts, you can correlate them. So there could be some mistakes in what I say, but the story, I guarantee you, this is the real story. Yeah. So when someone is making a video, as of now, we do not, even in this 21st century, we do not have the means, or we have not understood what is really going on within the reproductive system. Yeah, it's not clear. There are many open questions. So by reading these Puranas, you can definitely gain lot of knowledge. You can even win Nobel Prizes. Believe me, I'm serious. So anyway, that is for someone else to do. By making this video, I'm trying to tell you how to read these Puranas so as to extract the information. Yeah? So let's briefly look at the book of Daniel. Who is Daniel? Daniel is someone who has been carried away from Jerusalem to Babylon, and he stays there under the king Nebuchadnezzar, and he sees some dreams And then what are the important stories? He had 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. So they were put into a fire, fine, and then Daniel was not there. So why was Daniel not put? No idea. And then at the end of the story, it goes on to say that Daniel was thrown into a lion's den, but he did not die. So what happened to Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego? We do not know. So was there a siege before, a siege on Babylon or Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar? There is no evidence. So there are a lot of confusions. If you literally look into the text, you will be confused. It is the same confusion as we have on the Hindu Puranas, unless you understand the real story. If you understand the real story, then okay, you can come to the real meaning of these Puranas. So let's start. The process in which an ovary of a female reproductive system generates an egg cell every month is called ovulation. Yeah? So this is the final step of our subject. But before that, when a female child is born, it already contains all the egg cells in a different form. So it is said that a female child, a newborn female child, has got about 1 million cells which can become the egg cells. So in its initial state, they are in the form of a primordial follicle. They are called follicles. So follicle is let's say a round thing. Let's imagine a round thing, a structure within which the egg cells will grow. So if we compare the Hindu Puranas, this structure, this outer structure is Hiranyakashipu. This is the demon, father of Prahlada. And the cell which grows inside this layer is Prahlada. So this is the baseline. Since these follicles, out of this 1 million follicle, only a very few will mature in a woman's lifetime, maybe 400, 300, 400, and the rest will all be washed away or die. Yeah, so every month one egg cell is ovulated. So the probability is very, very high that these cells are being washed away. So these egg cells lie in its dormant state for a very, very long time. Just imagine, when a child is born, they are there, and these cells stay in that state until they attain the stage of maturity. Yeah? So how many years? Quite long. This is the reason why in the book of Daniel, they say that Daniel and his friends, they did not eat what was eaten by the king. So because these primordial follicles, they do not intake anything, they just lie in a dormant state without depending on the surrounding, let's say, nutrients or whatever. So they just stay like that. Over a period of time, the cells, the first thing is the cells will be selected, because just imagine 1 million cells are there, only a very few will be selected. How are they selected? Switch over to Bhagavata Purana. It says Hiranyakashipu wanted to perform austerities by standing, let's say, by holding his hands over his head and standing on his toes. What this signifies is that the outer layer of the primordial follicle changes its shape, the cell shape, from a flat cell, granulosa cell, to a cuboidal structure. This is the first significance, or the change in the physical structure marks the selection of this primordial follicle so as to mature to the next stage. Yeah? So, this is why in Bhagavata Purana they say that Hiranyakashipu was standing straight and he did penance for a long time. So, when these cell structures change its shape, Brahma came and he poured some water on Hiranyakashipu. That means there is a biological feedback coming from the endocrine system of the human body to the ovary, and by reaching the primordial follicle, then starts the initial recruitment. This is the technical term. Thus the cell, the primordial follicle, is selected for the next stages of growth. Now, this progresses. So, there are, let us say, at least 3 different things happening. One is the primordial follicle, the outer layer is growing. The cell, the egg cell is growing. Yeah? And then there is also the cell division which would have to take place. So, there are 3 elements which go in parallel. The process through which this outer cell grows is technically called the folliculogenesis. You can read about that. Folliculogenesis. This goes from a primordial follicle, and then primary, and the secondary and tertiary, or antral follicle, Graafian follicle, and then ovulation. So, this is the stages for the outer layer. And then the oogenesis, the egg cell, also undergoes growth. So, now what has happened? The follicle is selected to mature to the next stage. It grows slowly, and this primordial follicle gives enough troubles to its own son, that is the egg. It tries to hurt. In the Puranas they write as the follicle is trying to hurt. In reality, we do not know, we cannot know. Yeah? But these Puranas have been written as if someone is watching this very closely under a microscope. In those days they did not have microscopes. Yeah? So, someone has watched it as they happen. That's it. Yeah? So, from that account they are saying that the primordial follicle, or the follicle, gives enough trouble to the egg cell. So, what happens? Then next stage is the cell structures starts to grow, and then the egg cell also grows slowly. Yeah? It goes to the next stage. In the biblical account, they talk about some stories like Daniel saw some dreams, and that is the way that is the main purpose of writing these Puranas, to talk about God and be good. But they also include the core story, and then wherever possible they try to add, you have to be good because God is like that. So, this is the way how the Puranas are written. So, as the story continues to move on, the next stage which is happening is the Hindu Purana says that the cell Prahalada was sent to the teacher so that he can learn. So, Sukracharya's sons, Sanda and Amarka, these are the 2 guys who were being appointed as teacher for Prahalada. So, they were trying to impart some knowledge to Prahalada. So that signifies the two centrosomes. You'll have to know a bit in detail. There are two types of cell divisions. One is mitosis, the other one is meiosis. So the sex cells, sperms, as well as the egg cells undergo meiosis, and especially in this particular case, for the oogenesis, there are two phases of two stages in meiosis, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. So the meiosis 1 would have stopped long time back, and then within this primordial follicle, as the cells are being selected, the cells start to grow again. So the centrosomes come into picture, thereby aligning the chromatids on different poles. Like, again, these are different steps, prophase, anaphase, metaphase. So they try to align. So this is what they call as teaching. They impart knowledge to Prahalada. So Prahalada rejects, and the story goes on. If you want to go in detail of these subjects, you should know Sanskrit, and then if you observe these things very carefully, you can really go to the level of genes. Yeah? In Bhagavata Purana, in Bible, I have read it on the, let's say, outer layer. Maybe if someone knowing Hebrew or Greek Bible can analyze it very carefully, they still can find some details. So this goes on. So what are the major events? As the cell progresses, the cell division progresses, from one cell, from one sex cell, we generate 4 cells at the end. Yeah, this is the way how the sex cells divide from 1 to 4. In the case of an egg cell, 1 egg cell is formed, and there are 3 polar bodies formed. Polar bodies disintegrate. So polar bodies are nothing but small cells which are similar, which contain the same thing as the major egg cell, but they are smaller in size because of the low amount of cytoplasm. So these 3 small polar bodies disintegrate. That's why in Bhagavata Purana they say Hiranyakashipu had 4 sons. Only one is given in detail, who is Prahalada. The others are not mentioned because they disintegrate. Whereas in Bible, if you look at that, it says that Daniel was there. Daniel was Prahalada, and the 3 others, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, are the 3 polar bodies which are created. They will be put on fire. Yeah? This is the reason they won't grow. It won't come out. So that's the reason why we read it in the Bible as they are put in the furnace, but they will not die because they go to God. Yeah? It is that cycle. So that's why Daniel was not put on the furnace to be burnt. Now, this is one, let's say, event which is happening in this story. Now, if we have to look at the next major stages of the cell progression to the next stages, we can talk about, let's say, Bhagavata Purana again. So what is the next major event in Bhagavata Purana? The centrosomes align the chromatids or chromatins, and as I said earlier, this is the way how Prahalada is taught. It is not a simple thing. They even beat, or let's say they punish Prahalada and so on. So it goes on a lengthy one, and Hiranyakashipu, his father, is not happy about the way how Prahalada is being taught. So they try to punish him in different ways. They all represent the real behavior of the egg cell. The egg cell does not take part in anything, it just stays like that. But since it is subject to different harsh environment, the outer layer becomes strengthened. Yeah, the outer layer of the egg cell is called corona radiata or zona pellucida. So these are the outer layers which start to grow and strengthen. Yeah, and based on these structures, the egg cell is not harmed by the follicle. That's how, I mean, it is clear. Without any great science, we can know that only when there is enough opposition, let's say the cells tend to have some strong barriers, some protective layers. So we know that the egg cells develop some protective layers inside the follicle. Yeah, so according to the Puranas, yes, it is true, because of the troubles given by the follicle. So what happens next? One has to remember the father of Prahalada, which is the follicle, would have got a boon from Brahma saying that no one can kill him. Yeah? Based on this, let's say he was annoying everyone, and Brahma also grants that boon. So as the follicle goes on maturing, egg cell matures, and at a certain state, the next stage of folliculogenesis occurs, which is liquid. A cavity is formed which is filled with a liquid. Yeah, these things happen automatically, and that is called antrum. So this is explained in the Bhagavata Purana as they put Prahalada under water. Yeah? If you try to look in Google about some matured egg cells, there will be a huge lake of, let's say, liquid within the cell, with the egg cell being pushed to one end. This liquid is called the antrum, and the egg cell moves to one end and stays like that. So the formation of this antrum marks almost the completion of the growth of the egg, and it is ready to burst open, and then the egg cell is ready to go out. So what happens at this stage is that the egg cell, the follicle, yeah, is about to rupture. When I say rupture, it is like it is closed, and it is said that Hiranyakashipu, he took his sword and he, let's say, punched a wall with his fist. This signifies that the crack of the follicle is made by the follicle itself. It is not an external event on the follicle, it is happening from inside, and there is a big sound, and Hiranyakashipu was about to kill, he was trying to kill Prahalada. But then he raises the question, if your God is everywhere, is he not in this pillar also? And then he bangs the pillar. And I watched in a video, a very recent video, that a mucus plug is released from the follicle or the ovary before the egg is released. It's a brand new footage. So this mucus plug, I relate, this mucus plug could be the wall which is broken. And then what happens? This is an interesting point. Now comes our hero, the Narasimha avatar. Now Narasimha avatar refers to the fallopian tubes. The one end of the fallopian tube, it is called a finger-like projections called fimbriae. Yeah? So like this, it will be like this. By the time the egg is about to come out, or when the ovary is about to ovulate, these finger-like projections come over the ovary and they stay like this, ready to collect the egg. Yeah? So they move over the ovary and stay like this. And then they really, in Bhagavata Purana, it literally says the Narasimha avatar got hold of Hiranyakashipu like this. So that means it is not able to move the whole structure, and it is like this. Why do they call this as Narasimha avatar? Because if you look at the finger-like projections like this, yeah, like long hairs and so on, and imagine that this is the face, maybe it was a good resemblance of a lion, maybe. Yeah, so that's why they say Narasimha avatar came at that time, and it was very fierce or ferocious. Yeah, and everyone tried to, and it killed the Hiranyakashipu. It killed Hiranyakashipu, and it was still very angry. At that time, Lord Brahma tells Prahlada, look, no one is able to pacify his anger, you go. And then Prahlada walks towards Narasimha. Narasimha avatar blesses him. The equivalent one in the story of Daniel is, Daniel will be put into a lion's den. This is the same thing. So he will be put in a lion's den, but he will come out unharmed. So what they want to say is, this lion is not hurting him. It is the same thing. And then the story goes on, and if you look at the story of Daniel, what happens to the king afterwards? They say the Nebuchadnezzar will be like a madman after, let's say, during his old age. He will be lunatic and so on. What the equivalent in Bhagavata Purana is Hiranyakashipu will be blessed by the Lord by his touch. So what this refers to is the structure, the physical structure of the follicle which contained the cell will now start to degenerate. First thing is, this turns into a subject called corpus luteum, which now starts to secrete estrogen, thereby thickening the endometrium lining of the uterus. So until now it was opposing the egg cell within it, but now after ovulation, after the egg has been released, now it starts to release progesterone. There are many hormones, steroidal hormones, which are generated, especially progesterone. Progesterone is the hormone generated by this corpus luteum to thicken the endometrium lining of the uterus. So this egg, when it goes through the fallopian tubes, and if it is, let's say, fertilized by a sperm, then it goes and implants into the endometrium lining. That is supported by this corpus luteum. So that's why they say Hiranyakashipu was blessed along with his 21 forefathers, and they support Prahlada. Or in the biblical verse, we will find that this guy was lunatic and mad, just going down, just to show that this thing has lost control, yeah? But it is still there, supporting the growth. So this is the story of Narasimha avatar. It is a real story. Until even today, there are many unknowns in the scientific community, and they are trying to find out some, let's say, more details by research every day. So from our perspective, yes, this is Narasimha avatar. If you go to, next time when you go to a temple, try to see, you will in most of the temples you will find some lions in the entrance. Yeah? On both sides of the entrance you will find some lions. This represents the two ends of the fallopian tubes in a woman's body. Most interestingly, try to observe if there is a small ball next to the lion. This is the key thing. You will find some small balls either under their hands or in their mouth. The reason is this: egg cell entering into the mouth of the Lord or the fallopian tube. May God bless you all.